I want to dedicate a video to talking about work and relationships showing up in the world. I guess just a hodgepodge. We'll see what comes up. And I changed the angle. I like filming here because I can sit on the floor. And I'd just been kind of resting the camera on a blanket. And so the angle was pretty severe, like on some of these past videos. So anyways, it's kind of just a minor thing, minor detail. Put the camera more closer to eye level. It's not quite eye level. In fact, let me see if I can do that. Anyways, so bear with me here. At some point, maybe I'll get a tripod or something. I don't know. 'Cause, yeah, I think there is something about, maybe it's psychological, the eye-to-eye contact versus looking down, and I don't know. It's not really about camera angle and all of that stuff, but I guess, those things do matter for a viewing experience. So yeah, so I took a job, a night shift job. I've been applying to a bunch of places and just been very, very difficult, frustrating, because I've been out of work for a long time for a variety of reasons. I wouldn't say I've been unemployed. In one sense, I've been working as hard as I've ever worked on anything, on healing and transforming my life, transforming, period. And so I've dedicated everything to God, just completely, wholeheartedly, foolishly in many ways, but just naively, innocently, sincerely, just full blast, full bore, total commitment to the path. And has produced some fruits, definitely has transformed some things, but it's like you lean too far in one direction and I could say the external world has sort of collapsed in ways that has not ultimately been very good. So, but I don't want to get into all that, other than just to flag that or mark that as a potential on the path, maybe even a likelihood on the path for some of us. But yeah, and it's sort of a course correction when you've been so deeply enmeshed in the world and in your persona and in your addictions and in your confusion. Sometimes there has to be this drastic realignment, sort of like drug addict being thrown into inpatient services or something. yeah, that you need to have this kind of drying out period. But yeah, I mean, the whole thing is just so fucked up and confusing. It's good to have compassion, and because you can just, yeah, we're thrown into we're thrown in among the wolves. This world is a carnivorous jungle. Confused, brutal, chaotic place to be. It really is. That's not all that it is, but it is that also. I love, there's a Christian prayer, I think it comes up when you're doing the rosary. Can't remember what it's called. This isn't going to be right, but it's something like Regent, oh Regent Sophia. Yeah, I can't remember. Prayer to Mary, I can't remember what, but uses the phrase, it's something like, be with us, bless us, protect us, love us, hear us. I can't remember exactly how they phrase it. Here in this valley of tears. And I've heard it in other translations, vale of tears. And I just love the realism of that. And what it's referring to is life here on this planet, this valley of tears that we find ourselves in. This pause, this comma in between infinities, where we're just going through it on this planet. I love that about Christianity, the realism, the brutality. Yes, the majesty, the power, the beauty, the truth, the invocation of the kingdom of heaven, the proclamation of the kingdom of heaven, the liberatory process. I love that aspect, and that's there, but I also really love the brutality, the via dolorosa. Holy Week, which we're in right now. As a matter of fact, I'm recording this. I'm looking at the clock now. It just now turned, it is now Easter Sunday. Wow. There's a synchronicity. Resurrection, that's what I'm praying for. That's what we are all praying for. Resurrection after this crucifixion that we're all undergoing here on this planet. The story of Christ was not that he, took up his ministry and rainbows and daffodils and puppies and kittens rained down from the heavens. That's not the best metaphor. That would actually be anyways. But it wasn't all just, he came down into this fallen world, into the madness of this world, the madness of first century Judea. That outpost of the Roman Empire, whatever. I don't know what the land was referred to at that time. What is today Israel and Palestine? To the Levant? Would that be the right word? I don't know. But he came down into that madness, and yes, something intuitively resonated with the people of his time, with the contemporaries, and he had disciples and people who loved him. but he manifested as the truth. Coherent divinity breaking through into this dimension. And even before Holy Week, even before his ascension into Jerusalem, at least the 3 years of his ministry prior to his crucifixion, it was it wasn't just like a ticker tape parade that God had come to earth. It was, conflict, opposition, antagonistic interactions with people of his time, with the religious authorities. The Pharisees, etc. So yeah, even prior to, he was run out of his, there's that saying, something about no prophet. What is it? I wish I could remember it. But something like, a prophet is not recognized in his own hometown, that even in Nazareth, people were like, who are you to be saying these things? Who are you to get up in front of the synagogue and speak with this kind of thing? You're just the hometown, you're just a yokel. You're just old Jesus, Joseph's son. You're nobody. Who are you? And sometimes, almost especially, people with a prophetic vision, or people who have some kind of grace to manifest in this world, it's almost their local context that is most hostile, most aggressively opposed to, most expresses the most animosity. And I'm going to have to look up that quote. Prophet goes without honor. No prophet goes without honor in his hometown. That's not right. Anyways, so yeah, from people that were closest to him, from religious authorities. And at a certain level, you have to have like a cosmic forgiveness, which is what Christ also represents, Christ on the cross. Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. It's just like, wow, that's that alone, I think. Yeah, that alone is just such a North Star, such a yeah, it's just so powerful. But but then, so all this opposition, I think they threatened to throw him off a cliff. Was that in Nazareth? Capernaum? I don't know. At various points he was thronged and mobbed, both by supporters, with adulation, but also by people who, accused him of working with the devil and wanted to eliminate him, wanted to stop him, ultimately wanted to and succeeded momentarily at killing him. But then you get into Holy Week. Yeah, and I'm sure there's a number of other examples I'm not thinking of, but you get into Holy Week, Christ ascending on a donkey, palm fronds and tapestries, cloaks, carpets, rugs, laid out before him, you know, I think paralleling David entering Jerusalem as a conquering hero, as a conquering king, but Christ coming in as a donkey, feted to some extent as he ascends up into Jerusalem. And then all that transpires during Holy Week. Cleansing of the temple, and his arrest, the Garden of Gethsemane, the agonies, trial, conviction, castigation, flogging, the various humiliations, and ultimately his crucifixion. I'm not sure. I kind of got off track here. I don't know, the spirit of Easter. But I guess the point is that I love that aspect of Christianity, that it's showing, it's reflecting the brutality. You find in Christ the beauty, you find in his teachings and his words, the beauty, the majesty of creation, of God, of heaven, of the higher dimensions. But it's a gritty story. It's a very gritty story. And that's useful, that it's not that, it wasn't Christ coming in on a white horse into Jerusalem, and all of creation and all of the groups and authorities and different levels of society just, instantly coming into coherence and harmony and perfect, blissful radiance permeating everybody's hearts, and total liberated festivities. That wasn't the story at all. Spiritually, it was. But it's like it takes these revelations as long as it takes, and it usually takes a long time for the transformation of a human heart, much less the transformation of humanity at large. And so there's power in the grittiness and the realness and the suffering and the truth of all that in the story. Makes it accessible, makes it human. And you understand why people throughout time have turned to that in their darkest times. And you see how potent of a symbol Christ on the cross is. However, every step of the story, really, how potent it is. Christ carrying his cross. Buddhism as well has that recognition in the Four Noble Truths. And the first one is the recognition of suffering. I don't have them all memorized. It's something like suffering is the first noble truth, dukkha. This world of samsara, this world of unsatisfactoriness, this world of pain, this world of suffering. And then he goes on to say, that it's caused by craving and desire, aversion, craving and aversion. That liberation is possible. And then he lays out the Eightfold Path. But it starts with that recognition of suffering. Now, again, every teaching is partial. The true teaching is silence. The true teaching is peace. The true teaching is prior to, period. It's eternally prior. Truth is one, undivided, whole. It can be pointed at, but it's a experiential reality. It's not the moment you categorize and break the white light down into particular colors, you're all of a sudden in the world of manifestation, and red is not, I don't want to go down, I don't want to use that metaphor, but once you speak it into existence, and once you once you take a certain position, certain perspective, you're necessarily taking on a certain set of boundaries and parameters when you put things into language. So, and I just mentioned that to say, that's not that's not the whole truth. Even, I think it's a really important truth that there is suffering and pain in this veil of tears, veil of sorrows, valley of tears. And there's also the possibility of transformation and possibility of light and healing. And you also don't want to get too caught up in the suffering aspect of it, because that can be a trap. And you can become fixated on all the bad and all the negative. I think the secret to it is being willing to acknowledge it. Not that you set up camp there, but you'll never heal unless you acknowledge your pain. You'll never be able to transform your pain unless you can allow for it to speak and to be. So that's where it's important. It's not a matter of having a really gloomy, nihilistic, negative, traumatized outlook at reality. That's not the point. And that's a danger. But if you're just constantly positive affirmations, constantly positive affirmationing yourself and your reality, then you're staying cut off from the pain that we all carry. Anyways, so I've just been really struggling. I guess that was the jumping off point here. I took to find a job, period. A lot of the training and things that I have sort of belong to a certain person that I no longer am, and a certain altitude of consciousness that no longer makes sense, that it just no longer fits. It's sort of like scorched earth, that I have this training and I have prior career experience. And some of it, I guess, is translatable, just generally speaking, but most of that resume is just dead to me. And that sucks. It's good because it shows that I've evolved and grown, but practically speaking, it sucks because I don't really have training for I just don't have, I'm just not, my identity is not wrapped up in anything that I would pursue as far as a career. Now I see making money just as a means to support healing, as a means to support the path. I'm not looking to find a sense of self in anything that I'm doing in the world. But it's hard re-engaging in that world that is so anathema to so much of the path. It's good in a sense because it's like I feel I could work just about anywhere, do just about anything, cleaning toilets, manual labor, pulling weeds, whatever. and I wouldn't feel diminished at all. I'd feel dignity. I'd feel fine. I wouldn't feel. So there's something very freeing about that recognition that achievement status is not where my growth lies, is not where my identity will be fulfilled. That's very clear. Yeah, there's a lot I want to say on this topic, and maybe I will in another video. But so it means practically that I don't really have the resume to get a decent paying job. I don't want to say that definitively, knock on wood, because anything is possible. I've seen that so many times. But for the most part, it's like entry level positions, retail, fast food, etc. I've said in other videos I was doing DoorDash, Uber Eats. And you can make enough money to stay afloat, but not to get ahead. And, when you have an old car and old laptop and car insurance and just all the stuff of life, you're working all the time just to make ends meet. So that's a brutal reality. And when you've got Kundalini, you've got energy flowing, and you're getting. See, the thing that is really difficult is not so much the job and the task. My body is a little bit older now. I noticed that. I'm not as. But, I'm grateful for the physical abilities that I do have. But a lot of it comes down to being in the energy field. There's like a certain ambient, energetic level of consciousness that permeates most of reality, if we're honest. But say working at a fast food restaurant or working, and I'll get to the experience I'm having right now in a second, hopefully. But the types of people that you're working with, and it's hard to talk about this because it sounds really kind of I don't know, bad. It sounds kind of bad saying it out loud, but yeah, I mean, you want to be Superman and say that you could work any job with anyone and be in perfect bliss all the time, but the reality is we're social creatures and limbic creatures. Well, I don't know how true that is. Energetic creatures on some level. And as aligned, as healed, as locked in as one can be. And I'm not saying that I'm fully healed or anything like that, not even close, but if you're spending most of your waking time around people who are very divided, very confused, very angry, very, just unhealed, it's hard on, it's tough. I mean, it's tough, period, being here on this planet. But when you're really trying to heal and you put that as a value, and then you're putting yourself in these very dense environments all day, the practical reality is just very tough. So So, anyways, yeah, I had just been applying and applying to a bunch of places. And the other thing is, I'm an introvert. I don't know how much stock I put into all those different personality tests and categorization and all of that stuff. But the further I go on the path, the more quiet I become. I sort of have to make an effort even to speak this much on these videos. I like just being in silence. I like my own company. I don't get a lot out of social interaction. I think some people find it very enlivening and energizing. I just like quiet. I like the quiet. I like peace. We have this culture in the US that is so work oriented and puts such a premium on finding one's identity through work, finding your ideal job, doing your dream job, doing the job that most aligns with your passions. What are you passionate about? What are you going to be when you grow up? Every kid has that question asked to them from, the earliest age. It's just so a part of our culture. And I'm not anti-work or anything like that. I think, yeah, I'm not, this isn't an anti-work screed or something, but I don't really, and for most of my life I did, fully believe that I just got to find the right work, find the right values, find the right work, have everything line up. But for me, it's sort of just something you kind of have to do just to keep the lights on. And that feels a lot healthier for me, that I'm not out there looking for fulfillment. And for some people, I just have to take them at their word. Um, they find their passions and their work line up 100%, and they feel very, in a way that seems to be healthy and uplifting to them, identified with their work. I just don't really, what matters to me is God, is peace, healing, and all of those other kind of identifications to me are step downs from that. They're kind of compromises. They are almost like diluted forms or surrogates or counterfeits. It's like artificial sweetener versus real sugar, real sweetness. And so it's sort of a compensatory thing of, I'm going to find the right job and I'm going to, my whole identity is going to be expressed through that. And that's where I feel most me and most seen. And I just don't feel that way at all. And never really have. Although at certain times in my life you would have asked me certain jobs I was doing, I would have said, yeah, this is absolutely my passion and I've got this whole rap about it. But so the path kind of destroys your life. In one sense, it really just destroys your life. Ultimately, to remake it at a higher altitude, at a higher octave, but it's a shitty, rough ride. This whole life, in many ways, is just rough. And yeah, a lot of people, you don't want to That's not the best sales pitch for the path, really, but it upends and can really throw your life into disarray. So, this is more of a rant than I intended it to be, but um, so yeah, I just applied to a bunch of different places and had some interviews. But yeah, and I guess that was why I was bringing up this introversion thing. So many of the jobs that are available are great jobs if you're an extrovert. Um, and basically every place that you apply, are the kind of buzzwords in the job description and in the business mission statement and stuff are just total kryptonite for introverts, for monks, for people who enjoy peace and quiet. Um, yeah, you see, like most of these job descriptions, if you love fast-paced, high octane, uh, exciting I don't know, just all these words where it's like, no, I don't want fast-paced. I don't want exciting. I don't want uh, whatever. Um, I'm not even sure what I'm trying to say here. But I applied a bunch of places and got some interviews. See, but here's another thing is I I never really liked interviews, and like when I would apply for scholarships or different programs when I was younger, that was always the part of the process that I hated the most because I don't like selling myself. There's something very kind of dehumanizing and objectifying about. And you know what the interviewers want to hear, and more I'm just who I am, and I just want to I'm just value being honest and straightforward. And there's this whole kind of artificiality and game you have to play. Like one of the questions on these uh, during these interviews or on applications is about, how would you deal with difficult customers? And and there's probably other questions too, but I just, time and time again, I just chose to answer those questions honestly. And I think I gave pretty good answers, but in sort of the trance of a lot of the working world, that level of honesty, even though I think it would make ultimately businesses a lot better, it's not really respected and it's not really valued. And so I would say things like, well, I lead with respect towards people, I lead with honesty, sincerity. I try to be kind. So I would kind of express my values to whoever was interviewing me, and do what I can to, and humility, do what I can to help a customer. If I can't help them to find somebody who could help them. If I make a mistake, just apologize and try to fix the situation. Be proactively kind, be proactively respectful. But in a few interviews, I would also say, because I've had this happen in real life, sometimes I would say something like, sometimes a customer can go too far. Most of the time, you just let it go. But maybe 1 out of 100 customers is just out of line, is disrespectful, is being abusive, and so you have to draw a boundary. And sometimes you you have to say, you can't speak to me that way, or yeah, you have to stand up for yourself. And you do so in a respectful way. You do so in a direct way, in a calm way, in a non-abusive way, but in a firm way. I don't know exactly what I said, but something along those lines. And it's not to me, it's just such a healthy way to live your life, but it's not really what they want to hear. They want to just hear you say the customer is always right and just always defer, but it's just not mentally healthy to live your life that way. So yeah, there's all these just weird energetic compromises and ethical things, but I did end up getting a job, taking a job, and it was a night shift. It is a night shift. That's why I'm recording now, because my sleep schedule's all flipped around. And in some ways it's a night clerk at a big chain grocery store, meaning I'm on night crew. So I do like breaking down pallets of merchandise, of groceries, and other items in the store. They come in off of the trucks on big pallets. We put the pallets out on the floor, break down the pallets, sort everything on the pallets onto our little green trolleys based on location in the store. So you try to have all the items that are more or less on one aisle, or one or two, maybe 3 aisles on your trolley. Take them out, you spot up the items in their boxes on the aisles. So that's one phase, and that takes a few hours because it's a big store. The next phase is you go and you go open up the boxes, and you start to unload. You start to put all the items on the shelves, and it's a little bit more involved in that. It's a little bit more involved than that, but basically that's the job. And then conditioning the aisles so that they look tidy and everything in a row. So the job itself, the actual physical labor, is fine, is great actually. I like the physicality of it, moving boxes, and it's kind of a workout. And I've only done it for a week, but I could already see how it'd be, in some ways, very good for my personality, because there's no customers. You're there at night, and there's a kind of meditative flow, I think, that you can get into once you have internalized and mastered all the different variables and exceptions to the rules, and all the different exceptions to the rules. There's a whole science that's been hammered out over decades about how to shelf and conditioning the product and back stock, and not rocket science, but there's quite a bit to take on, at least initially. But I could see how that could become very meditative, just by yourself working down an aisle, and they let you listen to music while you're working, or podcast or whatever. So that aspect of the job I knew would be good. And I think after a week, I can see how it would be really suited to my personality. And But the reality of working nights is proving to be too difficult. The other thing is they gave me a pretty good pay rate for somebody who had no experience in the field. And so that was great. That was an attraction. But the reality of working nights is tough. The sleep schedule I've pretty much figured out. I had to put cardboard on all of the windows in my space to kind of try to keep the heat down so that I could sleep during the day. And I had to make, just a bunch of little accommodations. But I pretty much, that isn't the biggest issue. It's just like, if I have a car breakdown that I need to get fixed, if I need to go to the bank, if I need to do basically anything during the day, I'm going to fuck up my sleep schedule, which is going to make it harder at work. I can't really reach out to people or meet with anybody. There's other things in my personal life where that's just so and then the guy, the manager or the person that is training me is just very short fuse, very reactive, very short temper, harsh with mistakes. And man, that is just not a good. It sucks because you're really vulnerable when you come into a place and you don't know anything. You are basically the definition of vulnerable because you have to depend on somebody else to guide you and support you in that journey. And I've been fortunate to have really good managers at different points in the onboarding process throughout my life that have really been kind of patient and kind and welcoming, made you feel comfortable. And that makes such a big difference. And the few times that I've been in that position myself, I definitely try to make that a priority, being extra patient, being extra open to questions. And because if you take the time initially and allow somebody to go slow, you don't, or I can say I don't at least. I think probably it's a universal, but I definitely don't do my best learning when have a ton of pressure or a ton of criticism or when you're afraid of making mistakes or afraid of asking questions because the person pops off or isn't patient with you. It just it's like you're on eggshells when you're in that state of inner apprehensiveness. It takes longer to learn. You tend to learn the fundamental. You just don't learn as well because you're in kind of a fight or flight state, and it's hard to onboard information when you're feeling under threat. So at least initially, the more patient you can be, the more you can kind of keep the complications of the job at a distance for the person you're training, and just kind of let them master the fundamentals, the basics, one skill at a time, and you scaffold and you build. It may take a little bit more time up front, but it's a massive savings in time and effort and training long term because the person feels valued, the person feels respected, you build a good rapport with the person you're training. They have the chance to process and integrate and ask questions in a less stressful environment. And then you tend to pick things up faster. You tend to pick them up more holistically. You tend to pick things up in a steadier way. And then the speed and the proficiency and the efficiency and the mastery, all of that comes uh, with fewer. It's like there's less holes in your knowledge because you're building from a solid foundation. And long term, like I say, you tend to be a much better employee, and it's just beneficial for everybody. But the person that I'm working for is just not that person. Um, and so that's so yeah. Just today, I guess technically yesterday, I let them know that it's not a good fit for me. Mostly it's because it's nights, and I guess I was apprehensive beforehand, but I thought maybe it'll just be such a good fit. It'll be such the right place that, no job is going to be perfect, and this will just be one of those things. But the reality of it is quite difficult, actually. And so I don't intend to keep working there, which sucks. I'm kind of like, why did I have to go through this whole thing? Because it was like a weeks and weeks process and all kinds of effort. And I often talk to God, and I'm like, what's going on, man? You have somebody who's so willing to do what the path requires. Why put me through all these hoops? Unnecessary complications. Anyways, so yeah, I'm just kind of, and I did attempt to talk to this, I don't think he's a manager, but he's the person who's training me. The first day, man, he just came down on me like a ton of bricks. It sucked, because I was in there with such goodwill, just working hard, and he just blew his top. Because he had a lot on his plate, or I don't know why, but just, yeah. And so I spoke up and stood up to him then and there, which again, it's like the whole thing was just so shitty because first day you want to have that kind of building rapport, that kind of grace of, I'm going to be a little bit more deferential isn't quite the word, but I was kind of more in I'm here to learn kind of a phase. And obviously, this person has a lot of experience and definitely knows the business side of it and the job aspect of it, the product and all that. He knows that inside and out. But man, it just felt so wrong, so inappropriate. And so I spoke up. I called him out then and there, and then I had another conversation with him because I've noticed it just seems to be a pattern that he's got a short fuse. And I grew up around really angry people with short fuses, emotionally volatile people. And so you have a radar, you can recognize these things a mile off. And the pattern is, it's like it puts you in this shitty situation of, especially when there's so much on the line, like a job, like your livelihood, you've invested so much. It's like you get put into the situation of either you fight fire with fire, which means you escalate, and there's a power imbalance because you're a new hire and you've got somebody over you. And so that's just going to create more hardship and confusion and conflict. But yeah, you can fight fire with fire, but people who are in that unhealed, I mean, we're all unhealed. I'm not trying to say it so starkly, but that have a lot of anger going on, that are very reactive, short fuse. When you step up, it tends to escalate. And so you walk into that at your own peril. or you defer, which energetically just feels really awful. You kind of shrink and you get quieter, and you just end up atrophying. It's like your spirit atrophies around people like that. So you can get pulled in one way, or you can get kind of alienated and cut off the other way. I've gotten better over time. You're never perfect, but of standing my ground, saying, "Whoa, you cannot speak to me that way," or it's hard to put into words because it's a in the moment kind of a thing. But as this was happening on day one, I mean, if it was like 15, if it was like 3 months or even a month, but like months into it, and I had, or if I had showed up on to the job and I was goofing around and not taking things seriously or being disrespectful, but it was none of that. I showed up ready to go. The guy didn't even welcome me or greet me onto the team. Just, I even showed up early, actually. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't want to get, I do want to express all my grievances, but I don't want to, at the same time, I don't want to itemize everything, but, because there is a place for being direct, definitely. And when you're in a position of, he's got, he's training me. I think there's another guy he's training, and he's kind of overseeing certain projects or certain aspects of the night crew. So he's got stuff on his plate, obviously. And it's good to be direct and to, delegate and say, do this, do that. But it's how you do it, I guess, is the point. It's how you do it, how you treat people when you do it, especially if somebody's on their first day. So anyways, I stood up and I said, dude, you are being way too harsh right now. You're coming across way too harsh, way too angry. You got to show some grace. It's my first day. Because I just asked him a question. You're learning, like, there's 500 different rules about stalking, and so I had a question, and he initially had asked me to ask him a question, or he said, ask as many questions as you need to ask. And I don't think I was asking that many, but he just, he blew his lid when I asked a question, a sincere question. So anyways, I think mostly it's that it's a night shift. And I think I'd probably stop working there anyways, having seen what the reality is like. But if I had felt more supported or welcomed or encouraged, and not like I was an inconvenience or an obstacle for the team, but maybe there'd be enough there for me to stick it out. But I could just feel emotionally, mentally, this would not be a very healthy environment. And it sucks because you don't know that until you make so many commitments and you go down the road, and it just sucks, man. It really sucks. Yeah. And I mean, and then, there's a few more incidences with this guy. And I pulled him aside, or asked him if he had a few minutes at the end of one of my shifts, and I tried to express all this. I slept on all of it. I tried to process through some of it. Tried not to be reactive in the same way that he is reactive. And these are all skills that I've had to develop, that have been forged in the fire, so to speak, because of my upbringing and just because of life on this planet. But I got my thoughts together. I felt a little bit calmer. Continued to just work hard every shift, even working through my breaks and try to do my best. And I was, I think, pretty skillful in talking with him. I said, I really see that you've got a lot on your plate. I see that, um, this is a big job. There's a lot going on. And there have been times when he has been kind of generous and more supportive in a healthy way, more positive feedback. But man, there's with this energetic pattern of anger, there's this kind of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing, and this volatility that you never feel fully at ease. You always feel kind of like, shit, is this the question that's going to set him off? Is this the mistake that's going to set him off? So you're always you're uneasy all the time. There's this apprehension. But when I talked to him, I did try to give positive feedback also. I tried to say, give specific examples of when he gave positive feedback that was helpful, that, that's good encouragement. That's the kind of thing that is helpful, and being patient is helpful. And then I also was just direct. I said, you've got a short fuse, come across really angry. You're overly harsh with mistakes, and I feel like I have to walk on eggshells around you, man. And I don't do my best work when I'm in that dynamic. I've been around angry people my whole life, and it's a really difficult dynamic, and it's not a healthy way to work or to learn. I don't know exactly what I said, but it was direct, it was firm, I tried to be balanced, I tried to provide examples, and it went off the rails. I'm sure I wasn't perfect, and I even apologized at one point during the conversation. I said, anything that I've done to harm you, forgive me, I apologize. But man, it was not a great. He got pissed off, elevated. Wouldn't say I got pissed off, but I definitely was feeling some adrenaline. And he ended up just walking away saying, you know what, do whatever you want. Do whatever you want, and then just clock out. In other words, I'm not going to interact with you. I'm not going to be available for questions. I don't know. And then he just walked away. So, I don't know. I guess I'm not sure what happens next. I'm going to talk to the manager, the actual manager. And see, the thing is my approach is always, I want to transform a situation. It's not really about winning. It's about having a healthy environment. It's about having kindness. It's about feeling supported in a job. People don't like to be told that they're angry, confronted about it. And it does help the calmer you are and the more reasonable you are and the more balanced you are when you confront people. It does make a difference, but I just get the sense that this is just who this person is. I mean, this is kind of bad, but he just, some guys have headphones that they listen to while they're out on the floor at night, him and this other guy, they kind of seem energetically, they're on the same page. They're these, well, I don't want to give demographic descriptions, but they've got these loud boom boxes and they're just blasting the like angriest, I can't think of the genre, it's metal, but it's like this very like sort of like late 90s 2000s grievance metal, like new metal maybe. it's it's bad. It's really shitty music. I hate to say it like that, but all the lyrics are about like how the world is out to get me and step to me, motherfucker, and you get fucked up. And I can't think of a good way to describe. I'm trying to even think of like what a song or a band. I guess sort of like Linkin Park-esque, but Linkin Park is almost too high quality. It's not like Pantera type of metal. I wish I could think of it. It's just bad. It's just really bad, angry music. It's like me versus the world, grievance. You get the sense that it's made by just angry people, people that haven't found a way to deal with their anger, and so it's just coming out. Anyways, that's kind of petty. That's just one small detail, but I guess the reason I was thinking about that is because there's this line, an Incubus song from that Pardon Me, I think is the name of the song. Uh, just a lyric, the perils of being in 3D. that's what I'm feeling right now. That this world is just difficult, man. It's hard to maintain your dignity, your value, your inner integrity. Alignment, or even anything approaching any of those values. And in the world, moving through the world. So I'm not even sure if I'm going to post this. I feel like I've just been kind of venting and ranting, and I don't think that's super useful, but it's helping me to kind of flesh things out a little bit. It's honest. And I don't know what comes next. And that's what's so shitty about this, man. I've tried so hard for so long to find a good job where I can make enough money to get by. Being rich is out of the question. But just enough money to get by that I can feel like I haven't sold my integrity and values in the process. And that feels like a reasonably healthy environment. And boy, some of it is me being too precious, I'm sure. And I think I've overcome some of my own puritanicalness and my own rigidity and idealism in this process. And some of that is healthy, but you also don't want to disrespect the path, disrespect God, disrespect yourself and who you are. And you want to trust that God is going to honor that and put you in the right situation and find you the right place. And so I guess I'm just at another point of taking a leap of faith and saying, I had this job that I would make enough money to at least support myself, but it's coming at too great of a cost. And I don't know what comes next, so it's just a shitty time right now. It's a really frustrating time. I want stability now more than ever. I just can't find it. So you trust that it's all for a reason. Even though I can't fucking see it, it just seems like meaningless suffering to me. But anyways,